And if the beat live, you know Lil Ju made it.
Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Post me a pic, finna make me a profit. When the liquor hit, then the bitch get toxic.
Why the fuck you in the club when niggas wild?
I been lit since brunch, that shit. Order 42 for the table, let's pop shit. Missionaire or doggy style on my top shit. Pussy ass niggas hating on me from the closet. Hoes tryna call me a snake, shit, I guess I can relate. Cause a bitch spit a whole lot of venom. And since these hoes all rats, when they come around me, all I see is a whole lot of dinner. I walk around the house butt naked and I stop at air mirror just to stare at my own posterior. I don't give a fuck who talk behind my back, cause the bitch knew better than to let me hear. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, hands on my knees, hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, shaking ass on my thigh shit. Hands on my knees, hands on my knees. Hoes said they wish a bitch would, and I'm a genie. Bitch so hot, gotta stay in bikinis. He got a girl, but he keep begging to see me. I love it when a nigga got a mouth full of BVs. No, I'm not a patient, better let him treat me. I gotta be a doctor, how I'm ordering CC.
Random flex about me, but you could never in your life peer pressure me into doing something I don't want to do. End of story.
I was at the supermarket when this lady approached me. She said, "Hello, I think you are the father of one of my kids." I cast my mind back to the one time I was unfaithful. I asked, "Are you the stripper from the stag do? The one who used a strap-on on me and dressed me in your underwear?" Turns out that she is just my son's primary school teacher.
I am so fucking livid right now. So they're trying to pass a law right now where your school is allowed to pull down your pants and make sure you are not transgender. They're trying to make it legal to pull down minors' pants and check that they're not transgender. And here's the kicker, it's only girls. So boys, this won't happen to you. Only girls have to get checked. And if this ever happens to you, if you're in school and they send you down to their office and they're like, pull down your pants, we need to make sure you're not transgender, do not do it. Do not do it. This is disgusting and illegal. This is illegal. We are minors. And guess what? It's men checking. Men. Do not. That is so disgusting.
This was Sapphire's doll from last year. Why can't I get a new one? A 6-year-old me whined. This was one of the first Christmases I remembered, and it didn't get any better from there. When I was about 5 years old, my mother married a guy named Paul. He had 2 daughters older than me, Sapphire 10 and Crystal 13. When she married Paul, we moved out of our dingy apartment and into Paul's house. Sapphire and Crystal did not want to share their room with me, so my mother put me in the basement at the age of 5. I was given an old worn-out mattress which I placed on the ground and a cardboard box to put my clothes in. At age 8, I was left at a fast food restaurant after I told my mother I needed to go to the bathroom. I was taken to the police station and my mother did not come for me until the next morning. She lied and said that the babysitter took me to the restaurant and left me there and that she was at work. From then on, I was only allowed to eat their leftovers. When I was 11, I found a kitten. I took it home, but my mother didn't want it in the house. That night, even though it was raining, she made me sleep outside with the kitten. I was so sick the next few days that I had to be taken to the hospital. I had gotten pneumonia. When I finally got home, the kitten had sadly passed away. I cried for 3 days straight. At age 13, I started doing all the chores in the house. I begged the grocer for a job. He let me work in the back so that no one saw me. I used that money to purchase school books and clothes, but Sapphire and Crystal always found my new clothes and wore them before I did, and my books were torn and marked in. I tried talking to my mother about being mistreated, but it was futile. Mom, why can't Sapphire and Crystal help around the house? I have schoolwork just as they do, and why can't I get an allowance for everything I do around here? My mother huffed and responded, Paul works hard to make sure that his girls can get the best out of life. You are not Paul's child. Is it Paul's fault that your daddy doesn't want you or give you anything? You should be grateful that you have a roof over your head and clothes on your back. By age 14, I lost any feelings that I had towards my mother, and I began to count down to my 18th birthday. It was then I realized that my mother would never care for me like I wanted her to. I wanted to make her as miserable as she made me. I wanted her to pay for everything she not only did to me, but allowed Paul and his daughters to do to me as well. I decided it was time to break up my mother's marriage with Paul, but I definitely had to be sneaky about it. A few weeks after my 14th birthday, while browsing social media, I came across the profile of my aunt, my mom's sister. I reached out to her and she responded. I didn't tell her about what was happening at home, but I told everything she not only did to me, but allowed Paul and his daughters to do to me as well. I decided it was time to break up my mother's marriage with Paul, but I definitely had to be sneaky about it. A few weeks after my 14th birthday, while browsing social media, I came across the profile of my aunt, my mom's sister. I reached out to her and she responded. I didn't tell her about what was happening at home, but I told it to her daughter, Tiana, my cousin. We knew that it would take way too long for the courts to get involved, so we needed a plan to get me out of there for good. My mother stopped working since she married Paul, and I know the way she spends money that not only is she not saving a dime, but we also need to hook her up with someone who has that kind of money to spend on her, I whispered to Tiana over the phone. Luckily for me, Tiana knew just the person for the job. I have a friend named Lorenzo who is the perfect fit for this assignment. Thing is, he also has parental issues, so I know that he will have no problem doing this for us. Not only does he have the means to do this, but he also has the banging bod to ensure that your mother falls for him. I missed a day from school to meet Tiana and Lorenzo. Lorenzo and his family lived in a large house and his parents were never home. He just turned 21 and just finished college. Once Tiana told him about our plan, he was all in. He was also a personal trainer, which made our jobs even easier. Paul gave my mother a gym membership card for Mother's Day and told her that she needed to lose a few pounds. Yep, he was that kind of guy. The gym that she went to was looking for trainers to join their team, and Lorenzo was able to seal a position there. Every morning at 7 a.m., my mother went to the gym like clockwork. For the first week, Lorenzo just looked at her from far away. Then, for the second week, he would tell her hi and give her little compliments. So, Lorenzo, how is everything going with my mom? I asked excitedly. We were on a three-way call and Tiana was waiting for a response as well. We'll be going on our first date this Friday. Lorenzo chuckled. Don't forget, Lorenzo, the more expensive the better. We need her baited like a fish on a hook, Tiana said. I can't believe this is happening, I squealed. Believe it, girl, we are going to have you out of that hellhole in no time, Tiana said. And Lorenzo, don't ask her if she is in a relationship or anything about kids. Out of sight, out of mind. Paul left for a weekend retreat Friday morning, and Sapphire and Crystal were staying at friends' houses over the weekend. I watched as my mother left home in a short red dress and stilettos. I smiled mischievously as she closed the front door. Every week, Lorenzo would give Tiana and I updates on what was happening. At first, my mother said she didn't want to take pictures, but Lorenzo persuaded her, and we had tons of evidence about what was going on. We just needed the right time to let the cat out of the bag. Paul was so busy working and my mother always had dinner home waiting for him that he never noticed any changes about my mother, like the fact that she changed her hair color or that she used to sneak away after dinner to talk on her phone with Lorenzo. Needed the right time to let the cat out of the bag. Paul was so busy working and my mother always had dinner home waiting for him that he never noticed any changes about my mother, like the fact that she changed her hair color or that she used to sneak away after dinner to talk on her phone with Lorenzo. It had been about 6 months since Lorenzo was dating my mother, and because he was keeping her busy, she was actually off my back, and for the first time since I was 5, I felt as though I could breathe freely. Okay guys, let's make this a Christmas to remember. Lorenzo, did you remember to get the ring? I asked. Yes, ma'am, I did. I got me a beautiful 7-carat diamond ring. I booked a small restaurant, so it would just be the two of us. The rose petals, the champagne, I'm ready, Lorenzo exclaimed. If this goes well, you will be bringing in the new year with my mom and I, Tiana exclaimed. You see, after we split up Mom and Paul, I was planning to move in with Tiana and my aunt. We finalized everything over the phone before hanging. This has to work. It just has to. After Lorenzo proposed to my mom that weekend, which was 3 weeks before Christmas, I noticed a drastic change in how my mother began to treat Paul. Her behavior was no longer subtle. She would talk to Lorenzo on the phone if Paul was around. He stopped making dinner every night. Some nights, she just was not there when Paul came home. Even though my mom and Paul had their disputes over the years, the arguments now lasted days and sometimes ended with something being broken. Every Christmas, Paul's company held a Christmas party for the staff and their families. This was one event that I went every year with my family, and this year made it more memorable. During his speech every year, Paul would always show a slideshow of the things that happened in the company this year. My job was to distract the person by the computer while I injected the thumb drive and prepared it. Dropping a tad bit of laxative in his drink helped me a bit. By the time Paul was ready to give his speech, everything was ready. Once the slideshow began, the room grew quiet as pictures of Lorenzo and my mother, including one of the night they got engaged, slid across the projection screen. Paul looked mortified as proof of his wife's cheating appeared for all his colleagues to see. Paul laughed nervously. There seems to be some technical difficulty with our slideshow. Eat, drink, and enjoy the party. Paul came off the stage and walked straight for my mother and tried to pull her out the door, but my mother wasn't having any of it. She confessed everything there and then in front of everyone. I almost felt sorry for Paul. Almost. That night, I asked Paul's secretary for a ride home, and my mother didn't even come home that night. I called my aunt and told her everything that happened at the party between my mother and Paul, and about how I didn't feel safe there. My aunt said that once it was okay with my mother, that I could live with her. My mother didn't care who I moved in with as long as she could live her best life. However, her best life was short-lived. My mother actually moved out of Paul's house and moved in with Lorenzo. Guys, what are we gonna do? Lorenzo said. My mother actually moved out of Paul's house and moved in with Lorenzo. Guys, what are we gonna do? Lorenzo said. My parents are coming back next week. We need to come up with a plan to get your mother out of here. A few more days passed and we had no ideas. Then something happened that steered the events in our favor. Hey guys, Lorenzo called us excitedly. Guess who just called my phone? Paul! What? Tiffany and I said, shocked. Lorenzo told us that Paul called him and asked him if he knew that my mother was married. Lorenzo acted shocked by this information, and even more so shocked when he was told that she had a 15-year-old daughter. He also said Paul wanted him to go to his house for drinks this weekend, but not to tell anyone. After discussing it, we decided, for safety reasons, that Lorenzo would wear a camera on him so that Tiana and I could see everything, and a wire so we could hear everything. If Paul tried anything, we would contact the police immediately. As planned, Lorenzo arrived at 7 p.m. at Paul's house. Paul offered Lorenzo a drink, which he graciously accepted, but he never drank from it. They didn't talk about anything except sports and the weather. Tiana and I wondered why Paul invited Lorenzo over. Then it happened. My mother walked into the room. Thank you for accepting my invitation, darling. I believe that you have already met Lorenzo, Paul said as he stood up to greet my mother. My mother's face turned pale as she realized what Paul had done. Lorenzo, what are you doing here? My mother asked, shocked. I should ask you the same question. I thought that you were going out with your girlfriends tonight, Lorenzo said as he stared at my mother. Or are your girlfriends coming to this little shindig? Paul chuckled. The last time I saw you, darling, I didn't get a chance to congratulate you on your engagement. When's the wedding? Paul sipped his drink and looked at my mother from above the rim of the glass. Well, my mother said confidently, we haven't set a date yet. And we will not be setting one either, Lorenzo chimed in. For 6 months I dated you, and not one time you could have told me that you were married or that you had a daughter. I thought that the woman I was dating was honorable, but it looks as though I picked up a charlatan. Tiana and I high-fived each other, totally enjoying the show. I can't believe our entire relationship was built on a lie. Why does this always happen to me? Lorenzo sighed loudly. Don't worry, you're better off without her. We both are, Paul said as he patted Lorenzo lightly on the shoulder. Oh, and by the way, darling, in case you haven't figured it out yet, I want a divorce. Lorenzo thanked Paul and walked out the house with my mother close on his heels, begging for forgiveness. That night, Lorenzo packed all my mother's things and carried it to a storage unit and handed her the keys. Lorenzo changed all the locks at his house, and he went to the police station and told them what transpired that night in case my mother tried anything crazy. The police even called Paul to confirm the story, which he gladly did. Within 6 weeks, divorce was final, and as predicted, she got nothing. In the end, my mom ended up homeless. When I heard my mother was homeless and begging on the street, Lorenzo and I walked past her. Hi, Mom. How was life treating you? I asked with a smile on my face. She looked at me, then she looked at Lorenzo. When she recognized who he was, she picked up a piece of metal piping and began swearing while she chased us. I still laugh about that afternoon to this day. Mom mistreated me, so I ended up making her homeless. Do I feel sorry for her? What do you think? Hi, my name is Willow. This story was a bit hard for me to tell, but I decided that it was time to